Welcome to Connections, North Carolina's #1 public affairs program, brought to you by Fire Media. I'm your host, Ed Clark, joined by co-host Cherelle James, and we're so happy that you're in with us on Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. We got a packed program, Cherelle. We got the coach of Elizabeth City State University, Marcus Hilliard, in with us today, and that's going to be the bulk of the show, and he's going to be joining us starting in the second segment, and I'm going to try to twist his arm and make him stay for 2 segments because we want to talk about college football, but we also want to talk about Elizabeth City State University, and we want to talk about HBCUs as well. So how are you doing this weekend, Sherelle?
I am doing amazing. I'm excited about what we're talking about today, and especially about Coach Hilliard coming up in his segment as well. I'm super excited about today.
Yeah, and I'll explain to you later why she's so excited. But in the meantime, before we waste any more time, let's jump right into it, Cherelle, because I really do want to spend as much time with Coach Hilliard as possible because he's a busy guy. He's going to give us some time. So in this first segment, we're just going to do some rapid fire and talk about some topics in the news because that's what we do here, in the main. But the first thing I want to talk about is I saw a story about the debt crisis, in that, the Republicans are still playing with fire on this one. The United States generally, extends the debt ceiling. It never has not done it. And right now, with the Republicans taking over, they want to reduce spending. But here's the deal, Cherelle, that I know that if you look at the statistics, most of that debt came from the tax cuts to the richest people during the Trump administration. And according to one study I saw, that 25% of all U.S. debt occurred in that 4 years that Donald Trump was president. What's going on with the Republicans? And is it just cynical, another one of those things where they want to cut spending now, but they weren't worried about cutting spending before?
I think that is one of those things of, they're worried about cut spending now because it's in their face. It's one of those things of there's not a problem, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to do whatever I do. And we have a problem now. We need to cut spending, which is the wrong way. As anyone who budgets at home and balances their checkbook at home knows that's the wrong way to look at things and to look at how to take care of the budget, not just for a household, but for a nation.
Right. Yeah. Because, if you're at home, Cherelle, I'm sure your husband says, are you at, Macy's again? What's the credit card balance? If you have a balance on your credit card, you got to pay it. If you don't pay it, you're in debt. Your credit score suffers, and then, and you declare bankruptcy if you can. But the United States can't declare bankruptcy. And they could default on their debt. But if they did, the consequences wouldn't just be for the United States. It would be for the entire world. We're the largest economy in the world. And that would just be a bad thing to happen. And to me, it's a cynical move. And I don't like the fact that we're even talking about it. My best guess, Cherelle, and I'm not good at predictions, but my best guess is that they'll come around in the debt ceiling to be raised, because it always has, right, traditionally. But let's just keep our eye on that, though, because it is important, because a lot of things are tied to that. I said we're going to do rapid fire. I do want to talk about another subject real quick. Investigating Joe Biden. What we found out is that he also had documents at his house. Now, the difference is it appears that they got moved to his house, or maybe he had them there when he was vice president and he was looking at them and they didn't get returned. Donald Trump, on the other hand, had hundreds of documents that he told a lie about, did not want to return. The National Archives asked for him. He wouldn't do it. And now there's an investigation, and there's a special prosecutor now in investigating Joe Biden and how he came about the records. Now, here's the question for you, Cherelle. We do a lot of whataboutism. You're right. What about Joe Biden? What about Donald Trump? Whatever. And we try to always equate things to try to be fair. But when you, in hearing this, Do you think that they're the same, or do you think we're doing our normal, especially in American journalism, our whataboutism and try to make everything equal?
Yeah, I think that that's what we're doing is, oh, this is the same thing as what happened before, and it's not. First of all, the amount of documents that have been found, even with them finding the second set of documents, right? It still isn't a third of what was at Trump's residence. And the second thing is that when they found them, they called immediately and turned them in and made sure that they got to where they needed to be, where it was a whole long drawn out process with Trump. And police had to show up, right? Agents had to show, Department of Justice had to go, and there had to be filings and different things, petitions and filings to happen to just be able to take the documents in that way. I think that, I don't know about you, Ed, but as we talked about this, and we both worked in government, we kind of talked about this off camera before we started. There is, who knows, where things end up a lot of times. Now, I'm not saying carelessly, but there's a lot of things, and when we talk about classifications, and I'll throw it back to you to kind of talk about that a little bit more. Classification of documents, something may not be as serious as it may seem just because of the classification that it's in. I don't know the documents that he had, but when you look at 14 pages or thereof, and then boxes of documents, there is an assumption there that, hey, something could have got mixed in with some things that you had at home, or a box that you had, that type of thing, not a box that that all of these documents do not belong here.
Some of these things do not belong at your house, right? I will talk about classification just a little bit, Cherelle, because I have worked in government before, and you had to get a security clearance and those kind of things. And there's private areas where you have to go and look at documents or be briefed by people, that kind of thing. And so there's different classifications, of top secret compartmentalized, and then sensitive, and then public trust. And in all those classifications, though, I think there's probably a propensity to overclassify in America. And how that shows up is, we still don't know what happened when Dr. King got assassinated. We still don't know when John Kennedy got assassinated, what really happened, because those documents are classified, right? And somebody's holding on to them, and then they hold on to them maybe forever, and at least through my lifetime, and I'll never know who they really thought killed Martin Luther King. I'll never know who they really thought killed John Kennedy. And we're talking 50, 60 years hence before because we do have this propensity to overclassify in America. This is what I'll say, and we'll put a pin in this, is that now there's a special prosecutor that's looking at both cases. They'll make a determination. And the difference, I think, between folks who are ultra MAGA is that they said that there was nothing wrong with the fact that Trump had those documents. But now they're singing a different tune. They think that Joe Biden needs to be drug up in front of Congress, and so on and so forth, and a whole bunch of investigations and all that. But we'll deal with that later. So if you're listening to us, this is Connections. I'm Ed Clark. That's Cherelle James, and we're just chopping it up a little bit, talking about some of the top news stories before we get Marcus Hilliard in here, who's the coach of Elizabeth City State University Vikings, the football coach, because we got a whole bunch I want to ask him, Cherelle, because football is changing. College football, you got these name, image, and likeness. You got stuff like the transfer portal. You got stuff like, how do you recruit kids? Because you got people like Deon Sanders and Eddie George and Ed Reed, top stars that were in the NFL that go to HBCUs to coach. And now you get this attraction of kids in there. So in the second segment, please stay with us. And like I said, I'm going to try to twist his arm and make him stay for the second and third segment, because we got a whole bunch we want to talk about that, but not just about sports, but also about HBCU experience, because our audience is primarily African American, and we want to be sensitive to that. and there's a lot of Vikings in the audience, and I want to respect that as well. So Marcus Hilliard is coming up in the second segment. So let's talk. Since I said Donald Trump, we might as well do one more Trump story. And this one is a sad story. Lynette Hardaway, who is known as Diamond from Diamond and Silk, who is from Fayetteville. Again, in our listening audience, there's plenty of people in Fayetteville who listen to Connections, passed away. Now, the best I know, Cherelle, there may have been complications from COVID. The other part of this is that they spent a lot of time talking junk about COVID treatment and poo-pooing COVID, and they actually were removed from Fox, of all places, because even Fox said that they went too far with saying that you shouldn't get COVID treatment and so on and so forth. Now, if that really happened, I feel for her soul. I mean, I really do. I just don't want anybody to die tragically. Her politics aside, what did you think about Diamond and Silk when you saw them, and how do you make some sense of African American conservatives who become full MAGA? I can see African Americans being conservative, but this full MAGA, how do you square that, Cherelle?
I wanted to say, first of all, condolences to her family, right? Because it's still a life, regardless of what happened. But I came to Diamond and Silk on social media, I think like most of us did, through social media, and then kind of that uprising that she had as Trump was campaigning for president, and they became kind of a banner, so to speak, for Trump's presidential run and winning there. And for me, I can't. You see, I'm lost for words, right?
Yeah.
I'm lost for words because this is not the first time I've had this conversation with anybody, but it's hard. It really is hard. I understand a conservative. Black conservative. I understand that because you look at different economics and different things of that nature, and certain things could put you into make that the best decision for you. So I understand that. And I know a lot of our listeners may be like, no, I don't even understand that. But to be on the MAGA bandwagon, and I had Black friends that were definitely, he's a man, he's a choice, he is going to happen type thing. And it just came down to kind of, I think we lump Black people all in the same bucket and say we all feel the same way, we vote the same way. And we ask other people not to do that to us, but sometimes we do that to ourselves, right? Yeah. And it's just depending on how you were raised, what your culture is, and how you were raised. It just may make sense for you. And that's why we all have a right to vote, the way have that freedom and right to vote. America is great in that way. I can't make sense of it. I'm turning it back over to you because
I mean, people make choices, right? And like you said, whatever politically people think is right for them. God rest her soul, Lynette Hardaway, Diamond from Diamond and Silk. And on a serious note, condolences to her family. And clearly, if she did die from complications of COVID, I hope that's an indication to folks that it's not anything to joke about. I thought when Herman Cain died, Cherelle, that people, especially African American conservatives, would take a different look at it. It almost went unspoken. Nobody really said anything about it, which is unfortunate. COVID is real, and people are still getting it, and people are still dying from it. Protect yourself, and I'll leave it at that. We got one more story I want to talk about before we take a break. I heard that Governor DeSantis from Florida and the Florida Department of Education will not honor AP African American History to get college credit because they said there's no intrinsic value with African American history as an AP class. Now, you know how I feel about it. Tell me real quick how you feel about it.
Yeah, and it's kind of to limit the teaching on critical race theory, right? I think that as someone who grew up in the South, there's a lot of things I didn't know because we weren't taught it, and I found out about it later. And it's the way to kind of rewrite history, in a sense, and I don't understand it. I think the only way you get through it, but I don't think some people want to get through it. I think that they don't want to get through it because there's a hard mirror that they have to face, not necessarily about themselves, but about their ancestors. You know, we look at these pictures are real, and that was somebody's daddy, mama, uncle, sister, brother, cousin. When we talk about the different things that happen, as we look at African American studies, and we look at what's happened in America over the years. And I think that that's just a great way to, again, whitewash the systematic racism that has taken place, as well as to kind of create the story that you want to be told. And that it's not right. It's something that's happened before. It's not the first time that we've heard of anything like this, right? It's definitely the most current. But I think it still goes to kind of that message that we were talking about earlier, as we talked about MAGA and just kind of some of the things that have been driven. The divide that has happened in our country lately has been because people have been so one way or so the other way, and not really facing what the real truth is.
Yeah. So we got a lot of problems in the country, and you know me, I'm a history buff. I write about history all the time. If you ever go out to the dealwithedclark.com, you'll see my blog post out there, and they're always filled with historical facts. I try not to just spout off at the mouth. I know it sounds like it sometimes, but I try to undergird everything I talk about with some facts and with history. I'll leave it there. I'll give you the final word on that, because I just don't even know what to say. Look, folks, I hear some music. That means we need to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to introduce you to Marcus Hilliard. He's the head football coach of Elizabeth City State University. We're going to talk to him about NILs. We're going to talk to him about transfer portal, how to educate these kids, how he recruits these kids, and also about the beautiful campus at Elizabeth City State University. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this.
Too many women die every year due to pregnancy-related complications. 2/3 of these deaths are preventable. As healthcare professionals, we play a critical role in making sure women's health concerns are addressed during and after pregnancy. Help your patients understand the warning signs and when they should seek care. Actively listen when she raises concerns. It could save her life. Hear her.
And welcome back to our second segment of Connections. I'm your host, Ed Clark, and joined by the lovely Cherelle James, co-host. And, you know, I hope you caught the first segment, because we talked about a lot. We talked about the debt crisis, ongoing investigations by Congress on Joe Biden. We talked about the untimely passing of Lynette Hardaway, better known as Diamond from Diamond and Silk from Fayetteville. Like I said, Donald Trump will be in the area on Saturday for her memorial service. We talked about how the state of Florida rejected AP history for African American history because they said it was not of any intrinsic value. And we may talk about that some more, Cherelle, because I don't agree with that, but that's a whole nother subject. And I promised that we'd have a Viking in the house from Elizabeth City State University, the head football coach, Marcus Hilliard. Now, Cherelle, I don't know if we told people this yet, but you have a connection to Elizabeth City State. So why don't you talk about that and introduce us to the coach?
You don't have to say it like that, Ed. You don't have to say it like that. I am. Well, let me just start it off in true Viking fashion. Viking pride, Viking pride, Viking pride. Okay. So yes, I am a graduate, a 1999 graduate of Elizabeth City State University, proud graduate and current president of the Raleigh-Durham-Wake Alumni Association here in the area, the August chapter where we lead from the front. So hey, that's who we are. And I'm super, super excited today to have our head coach for football, Marcus Hilliard, on. And I just, before we start talking to him, I just got to let you guys know just a little bit about him, just a tidbit. So for instance, let me just tell you that he was nationally recognized by the American Football Coaches Association as a Division II Assistant Coach of the Year in 2018. Let me also let you know that he has been a part of 4 CIAA championship games, the 2006, 2008, 2011, 2012, and 4 postseason appearances. And then not only that, but he has increased his knowledge and continues to increase his knowledge. So in 2010, he was among 25 participants in the U.S., let me be very clear, chosen to participate in the NCAA Men's Football Coaches Academy. And it was a program that was developed to prepare minority coaches for head coaching positions. And we could talk about that in the major leagues, right, in the NFL and even just at that college level, the minority coaches, that's a whole nother segment all by itself. But in that same year, he also was selected to participate in the Pittsburgh Steelers preseason training through the Bill Walsh NFL Diversity Coaching Fellowship Program, where it provides NFL coaching experience to a diverse group of coaches every year. And so it exposes talented minority college coaches, high school coaches, and former players to the methods and philosophies of NFL coaching staff. Now, I wanted to give you guys all that, and I can go on and on and on about a whole bunch of other things that he did. But I just wanted you guys to know that I know some people may be saying Elizabeth City ain't even in the Raleigh-Durham area, or, we have listeners from all over. But we wanted to bring some of the best. And yes, Elizabeth City State University employs the best, has the best. We are the best. And with that, I say, my friend, Coach Hilliard, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Cherelle. I am excited to be on. Definitely when Vikings call, we pull for each other. And it is definitely truly an honor to be a part of this, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, Marcus, when Cherelle and I were talking off mic a couple of weeks ago, and I realized how much she knew about football, and she was very knowledgeable, and I was like, I would love to have a HBCU football coach on to talk about a lot of the issues that are going on in collegiate sports right now. I said, do you know anybody? And she said, of course I do. I know the coach at Elizabeth City State. And I said, well, let's talk to him. And I looked you up at the time, and, she ran through all your accolades and stuff. And, the first thing I was thinking is, a lot of people are always looking at going to PWIs, going to a Power 5, and all this stuff. And we just went through the whole thing with Deon Sanders down at Jackson State, and now Ed Reed at Bethune-Cookman, right? Those are two of the biggest names ever in the NFL. Eddie George, Tennessee State, those kind of things. But you played at a HBCU, and you came back to coach at HBCU. So let's start there. Because I want to talk about what you believe the mission of sports is at a HBCU that may be different from one of those Power 5 schools or, Division I, but we focus on that all the time.
Right. Well, traditionally HBCUs, their mission was to make sure that we can appease the underserved, and that is the mission of HBCUs. The players or the students that couldn't get to those PWIs for whatever odd reason. That's why we have HBCUs. They are there to serve the underserved. And from an athletic standpoint, it is the same way. Those guys, you might not have all the measurables to what we call or say make it to a Power 5 or a Group of 5, but, we can serve you here. In Division II and definitely at an HBCU. And that's been the goal, and that's been the mission pretty much of all HBCUs, but definitely Elizabeth City. We want to give you, and we don't call it a second chance, but we want to make sure that, we're serving a population that may not have been afforded opportunity at those Power 5 schools. And those are the student athletes that we try to recruit. Of course, we want them to be of a high academic standard, but we want to make sure that if you're eligible and you can make or have the minimum admission requirement and you can play ball and you want to come to the illustrious Elizabeth City State University or any HBCU, we grant you that opportunity. So that is the mission, to serve the underserved, who wouldn't necessarily be able to go to a Power Five or what we call a PWI.
Now, one of the things that I'm interested in is because over the last few years, and we look at Mackenzie Scott has given a lot of money to different HBCUs, including Elizabeth City State University, and we've just gained a lot of attention, HBCUs in general. What would you attribute that attention to, alluding to, Ed talked about Deon Sanders and Ed Reed and Eddie George, kind of everyone's now looking at HBCUs as this is the hot thing now. We've been around for hundreds of years. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think having the Deon Sanders, the Ed Reeds, the Eddie Georges, they put a national spotlight just because of their celebrity status. As you know, we've been like that, but just having those faces that people see, those are Hall of Famers. Those are guys that people actually know, and now they are connected. We knew what we were, but now having a national face like a Deon and like a Ed Reed and like a Eddie George, now the world sees what we are. And we've got to do a great job of taking that momentum and now just showing them, hey, it's not stereotypical. We're not just for Black students. These are good universities as well. We know, like I stated earlier, what our primary focus was, but we've evolved and everybody's evolved. And we have these top level academic programs. We have these top level athletic programs, which Deon and has proven that can compete with the other schools. So kudos to them for presenting us in a national light. But HBCUs have been what they have been, and they just, those guys were able to just promote the brand.
Yeah, I want to remind you're listening to Connections. That's Marcus Hilliard, the head football coach at Elizabeth City State University. We're so happy to have a Viking in the house. Actually, we got two in the house today, so we're happy to have the Vikings in the house. And Cherelle, you did mention something that why Elizabeth City State, right? Not just because you're on here, but our audience goes all the way up to Petersburg, across to Elizabeth City, down to Greenville and in eastern North Carolina. And Marcus, one of the things I think about is, people, they'll say, I'm a Carolina fan or I'm an East Carolina fan or whatever else, Talk to me about, generally when you think about HBCUs, normally if you're alumni, you're definitely a fan. But how do you go about trying to attract people who had not been really paying attention to HBCU football? Is there anything that you're trying to do to get in the community, to get people to know about the Vikings that maybe you weren't doing in the past because of things like NIL, the naming, images, and likeness, right? That you have opportunities where some of your players can be introduced to the community in a different way, or just the fact that we see white players are thinking about coming to HBCUs, right? So what's it like in the recruiting world, and what it's also like trying to recruit fans in the HBCU world?
Well, and not just the HBCU world, but athletics in general. Social media has driven or has played a part into everything. Back when I played, and probably when you played, Ed, we didn't have this social media push. We didn't have social media even when I played. I know I'm pretty young, but we didn't. Cell phones weren't as relevant.
So what you trying to say, Marcus? Wait a minute.
I say us. So, but social media is the driver of this. So what happens is you're promoting a brand. We were fortunate this year to be on television 4 times for football. HBCU, we're on national TV. So that promotes the brand. And now people are seeing that, this is good football. This is a good team. Let me go on the website and look up Elizabeth City State or Virginia State or whatever HBCU. And so social media has been the driver of that. As far as the NILs, those are something that it's a game changer, because now you have to compete with other teams. I heard we just had a coaches convention a couple weeks ago, but now it's kind of like a pay for play. You get these collectives, and now student athletes are seeing, well, how much are you offering? Well, how much is this school offering? How much is this school offering? So now it's a recruiting war as to who can offer the most money for me to pretty much come to their school. And I think the idea of NILs are cool, but I don't think it was a well thought out plan. As far as our level, you don't see it as much. I think those are a lot of the Power Five and Group of Five things that you see. But even on the Division II level, you do see some kids. We even had a couple kids had a couple NIL deals, even on our level here at HBCUs. So they are game changers. They're still kind of in the developmental stage here for Division II and HBCUs, but I can see them being a driving force in the near future.
So right now, they're not. There's not one rule across the board. Do you see that as a help or a hindrance as you recruit and retain players?
It's definitely a hindrance. We talked about that at the coaches convention a couple weeks ago. It's like a wild, wild west. And even if you have rules, they're not being enforced. Who's going to enforce them? It's cool to have rules, but if you don't have any enforcement behind it, then, you end up, you could do anything. So for me, just in particular, though, that hasn't really been a hindrance for recruiting. Like I said, here on our level, Division II, you really don't get a lot of those. You really don't get a lot of those NIL deals. Now we are starting to partner with a company that, because we know that's the new wave, as the kids call it. So we got to continue to be relevant and provide those NIL opportunities for our student athletes. But currently, it hasn't deterred anything. But we always prepare for what's next, and I think that is the way of the land. The pay for play is going to be here to stay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I love that so much, but it is what it is. Things do change over time. Before we run out of time in this segment, the other part of this, you alluded to it, Coach, is this recruiting becomes much more competitive. I mean, it always was, but it becomes much more competitive. Now, the other sport I played was rugby, and I literally played rugby until my 40s. Because there was always a place to play it, right? It's just like soccer and some other sports. That American football is really weird because you play it Pee-wee and you may play it through college, but if you play it through college, I mean, you have to be sort of on a different level athletically and skill-wise. There's no sort of recreational, football unless you're playing flag football, right? And then certainly when I was still playing rugby, I think I played my last game when I was 47 in a competitive game, right? Because there was always a division for that. So let's back it up. The other thing that's in rugby and soccer and some of those other sports is that you have this sort of graduated system, right? Where the sport isn't attached to a school, but it's attached to a city or a team. Have you ever thought about whether or not it would make sense at some point to say Joey is 18, but he actually started with the Pittsburgh Steelers when he was 7 in their farm system. And if he graduated his way up in Elizabeth City State becomes sort of a feeder for the Pittsburgh Steelers or whatever, and that would be a more rational system. Is that I know there's so much money in American sports that it's probably not realistic at this point. But have you ever thought about, is there a third way to do this? Is there another way to do this that would make it more realistic for folks?
I haven't thought about that. I think for football purposes, that could be the case. But then you would kind of X out if they started with that feeder system. Then you get into, well, who's the feeder school? Who is the school to do this? And then goes back to HBCUs. Well, that competition is not as good as Power Five, so we're going to exclude them. So I think you get into so many issues as to, even legally, Title IX, this is not right. So, I think football has a good grasp as to what they're doing now. You have other leagues, the XFL, the USFL, to try to be kind of those feeder things, but the NFL is kind of top tier, and they're the dominant force. They are the Amazon of football. So, whatever they do or whatever they say, that's what goes. But that's very interesting. That could very well maybe something to look into. But I could see kind of the reservations from a lot of coaches saying, and who coaches on these feeder teams? How many feeder teams we have? There's so many other snowball effects that that you have to think about. And then rules, like when do they play, what season, it's just so many other things other than just, I like the concept. It's just so many other things that you got to think about, when it will come to that.
Well, you know what? I think we need to take a break, but I want you to stay if you can do that. And when we come back, I want you to talk about the transfer portal, because I know you have an opinion on this. Because I know all football coaches and basketball coaches have an opinion on the transfer portal. Because some days I look in the paper and it's like, it'll be hundreds of people just swapping teams. And I'm like, what in the world? And it seemed to have come overnight. So I hear some music in the background. So let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to pick up with Marcus Hilliard, Elizabeth City State University Vikings in the house. And we'll talk about that and a whole bunch more after this break.
Be the difference at Elizabeth City State University and discover your strength, ignite your passion, and prepare to make a difference in the world. Nestled in northeastern North Carolina, ECSU is your home away from home, offering a quality and affordable education in a nurturing and supportive environment. Size does matter, and ECSU's small size means that students know their classmates, students receive one-on-one attention from their professors, and students know that the faculty and staff are committed to their academic success. Welcome to ECSU, where your success, safety, and comfort matter. At Elizabeth City State University, students come to discover their passion and leave to conquer their dreams. Whatever your passion is, you can be the difference at ECSU.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of Connections. It is Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. Cherelle, I'm still messed up. I can't get the year right. But I guess usually by June, you get it, you start putting 2023 like you're supposed to. So hopefully it won't take me too much longer. And in my advanced age, as Coach Hilliard reminded me of, we start to forget and stuff like that. So at any rate, Marcus Hilliard is also in the house. He's the head football coach of Elizabeth City State University Vikings. We've been talking about a bunch of stuff. First segment, we talked about the debt crisis and Joe Biden and a whole bunch of other stuff. Second segment, we talked about some of the challenges at HBCUs. And I know, Cherelle, you had a question for Coach about something that's been bothering me. And maybe you guys can figure this out.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say about that date, especially with today being the 22nd of 2023, like you get all those twos in there, it definitely trips you up a little bit. But Coach, thank you for hanging out with us a little bit longer. And this transfer portal, as Ed alluded to it before we went to break, you look and there's players being transferred here and there and everywhere. You go to sleep, wake back up, and you're like, what happened? What is going on? And what's your take on it?
Well, the transfer portal is a gift and it's a curse. It is a 50-50 chance. I like it. We've used it. You have to if you want to stay relevant. We've lost guys to the transfer portal since my tenure here, my short tenure here. I think what it was intended for. Because before, and I'm dating myself, Ed, with this, before, you had to have permission to contact student athletes. So that was not easy. You had to go through compliance and get in contact if they wanted to go to your university. But now, they have the transfer portal. You don't have to do those things. It makes it easier. Well, the smart coaches said, well, you know what? Let's look up and see if such and such is in the transfer portal. So now they've created this free agency system that wasn't supposed to be. And so you have all of these student athletes hitting the transfer portal from such school, and it's free agency basically. We go in here, we look, we even have a program that sorts by position and what date you got in the transfer portal. Say if we need a defensive lineman, let's go to our system and see who's in the portal at defensive line. They pull up the information, we shoot them a tweet on Twitter, and we go from there. And so it's pretty much a free agency system. It's like I said, a gift and a curse. We use it. Don't think it was intended for this, but that is like this is the new era. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, most definitely. Coach, I joke a lot about my advanced age and being in AARP and all that stuff, but I do remember, all that compliance stuff and people not being able to contact folks or whatever. Kids used to get in trouble if they got jerseys or got too many tickets for their family. And then people were treated as pariahs because, they were some kid from Goldsboro who happened to be really good at football, right? And then this school is telling them that you're going to spend all these hours making money for me and you can't reap any benefit or reward. And so on and so forth. And as a kid from Eastern North Carolina, you're thinking, maybe this football thing is an opportunity for me. But again, let's step back a little bit. These are kids after all. And ultimately, not many of them are going to make the NFL. Now, Elizabeth City State has Jeffro Pugh, who was one of the best football players ever, right? But it's been a long time since Elizabeth City State has sent someone to the NFL. When you walk in the door at a kid's house, or you're looking in the portal and you see a really good kid, a lot of times, because I coached, for a lot of years, and these kids would think, I'm going to be in the NFL. Now, currently, I have a nephew that plays in the NFL. I had a lot of cousins who played in the NFL, so on and so forth. But you have to be an extraordinary athlete to play in the NFL.
Of course.
But you have to be an extraordinary athlete to play at Elizabeth City State University. And not only that, you have to be a student. Talk to me about how you talk to these kids about real life, what life is like after football in the recruiting process, and also the benefit of being at Elizabeth City State University as a student. Because clearly you did well. You went there, and whether you were playing football or not, I can tell that you would have been good at being whatever, right? So what's the appeal to a kid when they're thinking they're God's gift to football, and you got to break it to them that they're going to be God's gift to Elizabeth City State University and they need to go to class?
Yeah, you said it best. I think for us, you gave the stats. I think it's like a 2% or 1% chance, even any level, Power 5, Group of 5, that you make it to the NFL. You look at the NFL, I think they have like 500 players, over 32 teams. Look at the rosters now. You got 53 guys. That's not a lot of people that are going to make the NFL. Now, you never want to kill anybody's dream, and it's possible. You talked about Jeffro Pugh, and of course we had the current now HBCU Hall of Famer Johnny Walton. Even had more recently Montario Hunter got a trial. We had some guys that get some trials, but realistically, you're gonna need a degree. And then our appeal is, look, come to one of the most affordable 4-year public institutions in North Carolina. Um, we have an aviation program that is superior, one of the only on the East Coast. We have a teacher education program that is superior, who's even birthed me. Before I was a coach, I was a teacher. I'm still am a teacher, but we sell these things and we put them on track for life. We want to make sure that they are prepared. You come here not only to play a great brand of football, but to get your education and be successful. And we have the means to do that, and we give them examples, and we let them know you're also going to win in the process. You're going to win on the field and win in life. So those are the appeals that we try to instill in them, but don't want to not let them think that they can't make the league. We just had somebody even in our league, get drafted, from Fayetteville, HBCU. That's what I tell the guys. We just had 2 recent guys right now that play for me here in my first year make the HBCU Legacy Bowl, which will be on national television on the NFL Network. So it's possible. You'll get the opportunity, but highly unlikely. So you need something to fall back on. So that's what we tell the guys, and that's why we try to sell our program.
So you talked about Elizabeth City and some on the academic side, a lot of things, and there's a lot of accolades and things that are happening in Elizabeth City. It's a great time to be a Viking. I mean, it's always a good time to be a Viking, but it's a great time right now to be a Viking with all of the things that are happening on the academic side. Tell me this. So when you have kids and they're coming in, we talked about some of the challenges that you have in recruitment. We talked about kind of how you push them and make sure that academically they're prepared. What is your top 3 as a coach, kind of when you're coaching these kids, because they're in your hands, right? The parents are sending them to your hands. What are those top 3 things that you're like, okay, these are the top 3 things with these kids that we're going to make sure that happens, and we're going to focus on because they've been put in our hands to, make sure that they're successful on and off the field?
Yeah. The first thing I start off with is making sure it is tough love. We are going to raise your son. We're going to treat them. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be fair. And we're going to make sure that we're not only training him for football, but training him to be a husband, to be a leader, to make sure we instill in those values. And he'll continue with that. I had some of my students that played for me years ago, and they still remember some of the conversations that we've had, back when I was a younger coach. And that is awesome that they remember that. And that is one of the things. The other thing is making sure they graduate. Right now we're at an 87% graduation rate in our athletic programs. We want to get that definitely above 90%, but a lot of times, at any institution, that doesn't happen. And assuring that the investment you made, you're going to see some return in that investment. So we're going to train them. You're going to see the return in the investment. And it's an awesome university. Our campus is beautiful. It's growing. People love you here. You know this. It's a family atmosphere. We care. You're going to have that one-on-one with your professors. They're going to call me right away, cell phone or office phone. You won't get away. It'll be the same, just like at home. You're just in a different atmosphere. So you got the one-on-one family atmosphere. People are going to know your name. It's not going to a big school. Nothing against UNC Chapel Hill, but they know you here. Ms. James, you need to come do your homework. You need to come do this. And it's going to be a challenge. So assuring them of those things when they come here helps to kind of soothe the parent and also sets the parameters as to what we would definitely bring to the table.
Yeah, I think that's a very good appeal. That's Marcus Hilliard that you're listening to. He's the head football coach at Elizabeth City State University. And then, of course, Cherelle James is in with us this morning, co-host of the Connections. Cherelle, when I listen to you two, I was starting to fall asleep because all this stuff about how great Elizabeth City State is. But no, seriously, the reason that I know it sounds like we're talking about sports and football, but I really want to talk about the advantage of HBCUs. I mean, clearly our audience is African American audience. We're Eastern North Carolina audience. I want Elizabeth City State to grow and to prosper. I think they do really good stuff. The other thing I am is a certified drone pilot, right? And you know, we've talked about before, Cherelle may be doing some stuff with Elizabeth City State around that, because it's a skill that you could make some decent money off of. And again, back to what Coach Hilliard was talking about, this fact that you can get personal attention that you could never get I was in classes with 1,000 people, and you're trying to get office hours with your professor, and then you walk in, they have no idea who you are, right? And the only people they knew were the ones who talked a lot in class or came already with some sort of, you know, credential, or their parents were connected, right? Legacy kids or whatever. So there's a good deal to say about HBCUs, and one of the things I want to do throughout you know, the history of connections, as long as we're on, Cherelle, is make sure we're talking to people from Elizabeth City State and North Carolina Central, and you know, wherever, Johnson C. Smith, Fayetteville State, because I think it's important that our audience knows that their children have options. Right, and there's a lot of people in our audience who have matriculated at HBCUs, and they should be proud of that. I mean, a degree from Duke or Yale or whatever, you still got to prove yourself when you get into the world, and I think that's what Coach Hilliard has been talking about, is trying to cultivate those young men that have, you know, got some skills and can go out into the world. You know, the final thing before we run out of time, Coach Hilliard, you know, I think you made a good appeal for people to consider Elizabeth City State University. You made a good appeal to the kid that's a good football player, and let him know he has some options or whatever. Here's the last thing. I'm going to Elizabeth City. What the heck is in Elizabeth City? Why would I want to be way up there in Elizabeth City? Talk to me about the atmosphere in Elizabeth City.
So Elizabeth City is known as the harbor of hospitality. We're about an hour away from the Outer Banks, which is a premier vacation destination to go to the beach. If you want sunshine and less work, you stay in Elizabeth City. You can go right to the Outer Banks. We are close to another metropolitan area. If you need to fly in, we have Norfolk, Virginia, just a little under an hour north of us. We have the 757 Hampton Roads area, where there are a lot of activities going on there. But Elizabeth City is a quaint town. You know, it's a retirement town, and less crime than any of those bigger cities. So you're able to focus, especially if you go to Elizabeth City State University. You're able to focus. It's not a lot going on. We do have a lot of activities on campus. Coming up here in the spring, we have what we call our Viking Fest, our spring festival, where we bring in different artists, and we have parties, and you know, but we're about the academic business. And, you know, like I said, the people here are friendly. This is a home, a family atmosphere. And that's what Elizabeth City brings. You know, not a whole lot of ruckus, just getting the business done, meeting good people like Miss James, and, you know, having those lifelong friends. So that is Elizabeth City.
Cherelle, I'm going to tell the chancellor he needs to send the check to you and Coach Hilliard, because I think you guys did a good job of selling Elizabeth City State. And, you know, like I said, I really appreciate it. I know a lot of Vikings, so for some reason, and all of them are good people. And
we're good people.
And I mean that sincerely. So Marcus Hilliard, thank you so much for coming in and sitting in with us today on Connections. And if I want to get in touch with you, I got a kid who's interested in playing or whatever. How does that work? Can they go to your website and put in their information or anything like that?
Definitely. Definitely can shoot us an email. They can go to our Viking football at ECSU.edu. They can send a direct email to me, MA Hilliard, HILLIARD at ECSU.edu. But more often than not, you got Twitter. And I'm on Twitter at Coach_M Hilliard is my Twitter handle. Shoot me a DM. We more often than like our coaches are up there at ECSU Athletics. Has the page with all our Twitter handles. If you want to be recruited or you want to be seen, shoot us a tweet. At me on Twitter. Send me an email. Send it to our ECSU football account. Just make sure though that if you shoot me a tweet, you have all of your direct contact information. Your height, weight, position, email, cell phone number. Make sure you have your NCAA eligibility center number. Need all those things to kind of expedite the recruiting process. Make sure your highlights are not over 10 minutes. We don't have a lot of time to spend, right? Give me a quick shot, elevator talk, you know. Give me what you got quickly. We have a lot of film that we evaluate. So it's easy ways to get in contact with us. We're always recruiting. We always welcome anyone to become a Viking. So those are the ways to get in contact with us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Marcus Hilliard from Elizabeth City State University, the Vikings of Elizabeth City State University. Hey, Cherelle, look, we're about to run out of time, but before we go, you need to help me do this with Coach Hilliard. I'm gonna get him like so kids when they're leaving Elizabeth City State and they're looking for another sport to play. I'm gonna recruit them into rugby because brothers make a lot of money playing rugby. And people might not know this, but one of the biggest sports agencies for rugby players is Rock Nation. And so Jay-Z has a lot of the top black rugby players in the world under Rock Nation, and they're making a ton of money. And it's complementary, all those skills that are in football. The World Rugby Player of the Year a couple years ago was a guy named Perry Baker. Perry played, I think, at Savannah State or whatever. He thought he was going to be in the NFL. He just didn't make it. He ends up being the World Rugby Player of the Year. And so there's opportunities in other places. I'm just messing with you, Coach Hill here, but there's other places for football players after football if they want to continue to play. So I just wanted to throw that out. Look, folks, we appreciate you coming into Connections, this whole new era of Connections. Cherelle, you got anything you want to say before we leave today?
I do. I want to say two things that we talked about the culture of HBCU, right? As he talked about Elizabeth City State, that's not just at Elizabeth City State University, but definitely there's some things that are just unique there. I was on my way to UGA until I stepped on the campus. And then it was just like, no, this is where I need to be. And I would be remiss. The last thing I would be remiss in saying is I know today's Sunday, January 22nd, but February the 11th is a winter open house. So any students that are looking to come and see Elizabeth City State University or anything like that, that's happening. And also dubbed for winter homecoming, which means that there's some basketball games, men and women's basketball games going on as well. And so it's a great time to come out and visit no matter where you are. If you can hear us, you can travel in and come see us. And then definitely in the Raleigh-Durham Wake area, our chapter has 2 buses coming from Elizabeth City to take students from our area back to Elizabeth City for the day. And so I just wanted to throw that shameless plug in. But since we were talking about Elizabeth City State University and kind of students and all that we have to offer, there's a lot of programs at Elizabeth City State University that you can't get anywhere else in North Carolina. You can't get anywhere on the East Coast for a handful of things that a lot of people don't know about. So I just want to thank Coach Hilliard for answering my call and showing up and showing the love as a true Viking from one Viking to the other. I just thank you. And I've enjoyed this conversation.
Well, there you go. Marcus Hilliard, Elizabeth City State University Vikings, Cherelle James. Look, people go out and do something good for somebody today. That's our message at the end of every program, and we really do mean that. And in this case, what you could do for some kid who's looking for a home, for a school, encourage them to look at Elizabeth City State University. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. Next week, Larry Hall will be in for Talkback. In the meantime, you can catch me on The Deal with edclark.com, and somebody named Cherelle James shows up on that too. Val Atkinson is there with us as well. He'll be with us on Saturdays. But you can always subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, whoever. So either platform. But see us in 2 weeks. In the meantime, have a good Sunday. Bye. There you go.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.